All right, it looks like we're right at 4 o'clock, so we'll get started. Let a few people wander in over the next few minutes. I want to quick note that we called a little bit of an audible on this session about a week ago. It didn't get updated quite yet in the program. I'm Greg Barabalt. I'm actually going to present the first half of this session about Skype Meeting Broadcast, but it's going to be more of a kind of an end-to-end. It is actually about what an IT admin would need to know, a meeting organizer would need to know, kind of how the product's built, what it does, how to use it. The second half of the session, I'll bring Jeff Tyler up to talk about our experience, kind of a case study of our experience using it at Microsoft within Microsoft Studios to produce events and give you kind of a best practices view of how we're making use of the tool within the company. So as I started creating the material for the deck, I came across this slide, and I usually had other slides that talked about kind of why we built this and kind of the purpose and how you might take advantage of it. This slide kind of spoke to me as, we built this starting about 2 years ago. And this slide, as I read it, I'm like, we've nailed all of these. Like, we're very, very clearly aligned to the Microsoft corporate strategy and mission. So I'm actually going to leave this up and then talk to it in a slightly different way. So when we talk about empowering more people, we built Skype Meeting Broadcast, and I kept using, starting even 2 years ago, I started using a phrase called democratizing large meeting production. And the intent of that was to empower everybody in the organization to organize large webinar types of events, large all-hands types of events, where, looking back 2 years ago, even through today, there seems to be a kind of on-demand, I need to run a big meeting. I go and kind of search on Bing and find some company that can help me do that. We want to just build that functionality directly into Skype. So for us, it's about taking tools that people already have, already know, and scaling a meeting from what today is stopped at 250 and expand that out to 10,000 and beyond attendees. So we're empowering everyone in the organization now to do that. The app itself and the system that we've built runs in the cloud. It's always in the cloud. It's actually a great way to get an enterprise that's not yet there to start kind of a trial in the cloud, because you don't have to migrate people and their home pools and servers. And we built around a mobile experience first. So as an attendee, it's critical for me to empower everyone to take a meeting, to watch a broadcast meeting from anywhere on any device. So we really focused on mobile first and scaled that up to desktop. I'm going to skip kind of to this last point about creating personal computing. And I've started describing Skype Broadcast as meetings on your terms. And if you watched Gurdeep's keynote, he spoke a little bit about this as well. I want to have people consuming meetings on their own device, so on any device they have, whether it's a PC, a tablet, a phone, whether they're mobile or sitting at their desk, at any time. So I could join it live. I could watch the bleeding edge of the meeting as it's happening. I could watch it a few minutes delayed. I can pause it or rewind if I want to kind of stop and do something. I get distracted. Or I can come back 3 days later and watch the meeting from there. So we support live, of course, but we don't require you to watch live. And now, with the introduction of automatic translation and transcription, I can also watch it in my own language. So I can have an English-speaking presenter like me, and now we announced on Monday we can actually translate in real time to my viewing audience with 50 different languages and subtitles at no additional cost. So really, it's kind of meetings on your terms. So deep diving in a little bit about what enterprise video means all up, and the life cycle of enterprise video at most large organizations. From an organizing point of view, from the people that are running the events, they look at sort of four steps of that cycle. They're going to plan the event and inform people that the event is happening. And for us, Outlook is that tool. So we want people to schedule meetings like they schedule any other meeting, send invites that appear on everyone's calendar and can be joined right from the calendar. We want to produce in tools that people have and know as well. So we're able to have people producing large broadcast meetings just using their Skype for Business client. I can join in, I can start the broadcast, I can choose my layout, I can decide what cameras I want to view, who I want to listen to, and invite other presenters as well to come and participate, and then stream that to a large viewing audience. At the conclusion of an event, I want to make sure that event is archived. That becomes a rich asset that the enterprise can hold on to, that people can find and view later. And so we need to archive that. Office 365 video and soon Stream will be the place that we publish these videos and let people come back and discover later. And then publishing a video is only useful if people can then find it. So how do we enable people to now search and discover and use tools like Delve to actually find that video after it's complete? And now again, with our automatic transcription features, we can publish the meeting along with the spoken words that were said during that presentation and allow people to search for phrases that might have been said during the meeting instead of just, I know that it was Satya speaking and it was, the subject was monthly Q&A. So I can search now for much deeper data about that and discover and find the meeting. So if I can do a quick survey, how many folks have already used Skype Meeting Broadcast in their companies? Okay, it looks like about 50-50. So that'll help me kind of tailor the way I describe the rest. So the first thing is I mentioned that we're always in the cloud. Every one of our meetings takes place in a resource forest that we own and operate. And we use Azure as a mechanism to stream that to our CDN network, the Verizon CDN network that we use, and then out to the viewing audience wherever in the world they might be. We require that the tenant has Office 365 online, but they do not have to have moved any users. So there can basically be a hybrid configuration. And even though they're set up as hybrid, we don't require, but we recommend that your directory is synchronized, that the passwords are synchronized so people have a single sign-on experience. But you don't need to move anybody off their home pool. So if you have folks that are deployed on-prem today, they can stay on-prem. Skype Meeting Broadcast is a fantastic way to start experimenting with the cloud if you're not fully there already. So don't move Link yet. You can keep Link. You can keep Skype for Business on-prem. You can set up your tenant, and you can have people go and schedule broadcast meetings and pull your audience members in. For the audience themselves, all they need is a browser and the ability to sign in. In terms of licenses, this has changed a little bit over the last month or so, 2 months. So we support any enterprise SKU, so E1 up through E5. We have recently enabled the government SKU, so if you're in the government cloud, you now have access to Skype Meeting Broadcast. We also now support nonprofit, which had been blocked previously. We are working on a solution for EDU, so we will be lighting up EDU in the near future. It's not quite ready yet, but it will be soon. And then in terms of client support, there's really, if you think about a broadcast meeting, there's kind of 3 important roles. There's an organizer or producer, what we would usually call the event team. And these are people that operate the meeting, responsible for making sure it's a successful event. They need to be on a Skype for Business client. We support Skype for Business 2015 installed as standalone as long as it has the update from last September or later, because our UI and our protocol is built into that version. And then we also support click-to-run only versions of Skype to Run 2016. So if you have standalone or MSI installed Skype for Business 2016, that will not be supported by Skype Meeting Broadcast. And the click-to-run, we need the 4227 version. That was shipped last November. And there's about 80% of folks in the world right now have that version or later. So hopefully everybody here is covered. So that is to drive the production. I'll show you what that looks like, but that's if you want to start the broadcast for the attendees, change layouts, change cameras, et cetera. If you want to present, and presenting can be adding my camera, adding audio if I want to drive slides, even navigate slides. I can be on literally any other Skype for Business client. I get invited into the meeting at any time throughout, and I can present like I would in any other meeting. I can even be on a mobile device. So we've had people out in the field. They get pulled into the meeting on their phone. They can point their camera at whatever they see, and that can get streamed into the meeting and then shared with 10,000 viewers. And the attendees, all they need is a browser. It can be any browser, and we automatically detect the right codec and play in the right format. And even if it's kind of a down-level machine, we'll go back to Flash if we have to show that. So really, any browser capable of showing video on any device, attendees can join and watch. And actually, one nice note, with iOS 10, If you have been using it, you probably have noticed this. On iOS 10, they now support embedded video in Safari. So until then, iOS 10 or iOS 9 and earlier had prevented us from showing the video in the broadcast while the user was interacting in some other way, by pulse or asking questions. They'd have to leave the video and ask the question and then go back to the video. Now with iOS 10, we can show it right in our browser, and they can scroll around and participate in the meeting in a richer way. So a nice change from Apple on that. So a Skype meeting broadcast is kind of at the core just a Skype meeting. But we have some limitations as what you can and cannot do that you could do in a regular meeting. And then we add a lot more beyond just scale. We add some extra capabilities as well. So I mentioned already that the limit for a normal Skype Online meeting is 250 attendees. For a broadcast meeting, we scale that up to 10,000. It's actually a soft limit. We don't have any code that prevents the 10,000th and one user from joining. We have a supported limit at 10,000, and we're always looking to expand. So we will be growing that number larger, and we'll make announcements as that happens. In both, of course, you can have presenters add their own audio and video. You can do that through local webcam or through a richer device. Jeff will talk about a model where we take an entire production studio and hook that into the Skype Meeting Broadcast channel and stream that out to the attendees. You can add PowerPoint, navigate the PowerPoint. Desktop sharing is, right now it's the #1 request for Skype on user voice, which is the tool that we use to collect end user feedback. So this feature is coming. It's coming very soon. It's going to be what we call video-based screen sharing. So instead of using the RDP protocol like we do today, we'll be encoding video on the person who's sharing their desktop. We'll be encoding there in a higher frame rate than we do in RDP, and sharing that into the broadcast. That can be done today in a normal Skype meeting, even with video-based screen sharing. It's coming to broadcast. We're working on it for this quarter. Audience apps, kind of similar. So we don't do whiteboarding in broadcast, but we do polling, and we do Q&A. In fact, we have a moderated Q&A that we shipped just about 2 months ago now on the broadcast side. It lets a moderator on the event team watch questions as they come in. They can actually change the language slightly or add an answer. They can reply directly to the person who asked, or they can take the question and broadcast it out to the entire audience and kind of start a conversation around it. So that is now available it's GA or generally available to everyone. Attendee audio and video. I get this question a lot as well. So attendee audio and video, obviously in a regular meeting, can be done. In a Skype meeting broadcast, we use a unicast one-directional stream. The video is flowing out from Azure to the browser. There's no channel back, so there's no way for an attendee to ask a verbal question or add their camera. We've seen people do things like use the Q&A, like sort of as a raise hand function, like I have a thing I want to ask, can I be promoted? The event team members can actually invite somebody into the inner meeting as a presenter. They can add their audio there, and they can contribute in that way. So it's a promotion mechanism that we have to use. We can't do it really inline, but it can be achieved through this invitation tool. Beyond that, we've built a lot that is unique to Skype Meeting Broadcast. So we support cloud-based recording. So every meeting, unless it's explicitly disabled by the organizer, will be recorded in Azure. We'll retain that recording for 180 days. And at the conclusion of the 180 days, we delete it from our system. But until then, you're able to download it as an MP4, or with one click, and I'll show you a demo of this, I can publish it into Office 365 Video, into a channel that I select. So that's our way of archiving the videos after they're done. Attendees can rewind and pause and fast forward, not be on live, obviously, but they can fast forward the event. So I can kind of watch it as it's convenient for me. That's also supported across all of our devices except iOS. iOS cannot watch a live event and enable you to rewind it. But as soon as the meeting ends, we flip it to DVR, to video on demand, and iOS can then play it kind of asynchronously. At the immediate conclusion of our event, we convert it to video on demand. So anybody, if you join the meeting a minute after it ends, you start it from the very beginning, and you're now watching it on demand. We've added, based on customer feedback, a switch to that can turn off viewing on demand. So now you have more control over who and when is watching the videos. You can require that everybody is watching it live. Live still means they have DVR control, so they could pause it. But as soon as the meeting ends, they can no longer join if that feature is turned on. And I mentioned this meeting producer role. We have a concept of, during the invite, I invite people that are designed to be on the event team versus people that I want are kind of designated to be on the event team versus people I want in the audience. So that's a role definition that we have for people that I want participating. And then finally, we have our post-meeting report. So at the end of the event, I can see a history of who joined, when they joined, what they did, if they paused, rewound. I see basically every action that a user did. And how long they viewed. I can see what browser they were on, what network they were on, what device they were on. So you can get a lot of sort of telemetry from the event after it takes place. You can actually download it while the meeting is going on if you want to see who or how many are online. And then soon, and soon being end of this calendar year at the latest, but we're kind of hoping for the next 4 weeks, we'll be shipping into customer preview our automatic closed captioning and translated subtitles. So we announced this last December as part of our big E5 announcement. And since then, we've been quite busy adding new capabilities, most of which based on feedback that we got from customers. The first was important for us and also important because we didn't have UI yet to do this, and it was a little complicated to do. Broadcast was disabled by default. We've now switched that to be enabled by default. So if you have an E SKU already, you can go to broadcast.skype.com right now and set up your first broadcast if you haven't done it yet. We've added the moderated Q&A that I talked about. We've added a richer recycle bin so I can delete, kind of manage the set of meetings that I've scheduled. Even after they take place, I can now delete them. Enabling and disabling this on demand, which I talked about. We have shipped what we call our integration with the ECDN and SDN partners. So there are 2 such partners, and I'll go into more depth on this in a moment, that help us with media distribution within an enterprise, which is, if desktop sharing isn't the number 1 request, or the question is, how do I deal with all these unicast streams coming through my firewall? This is the answer to that, or at least it's an answer to that. And we've shipped, from our end, the official release that integrates with both Hive Streaming and Collective as SDN partners. The most important ones, we've shipped into what we call our Go Local environments. So based on where your Office 365 tenant is deployed, in like Japan, for example, we have a dedicated data center in Japan. We have Skype Meeting Broadcast there, and so that's where your broadcast meetings will originate. So that became active about 2 months ago. Availability into GCC. And then we added this UI that I mentioned about the ability to turn on, turn off broadcast, which previously had been only through command line. We now have UI to support this. So in TAP right now, so if you're already a TAP customer, you have access to these today. If you're not a TAP customer yet, you can go to skypepreview.com and sign up to be, and we can get you into the system. We can turn your tenant into a TAP tenant. TAP is just our definition of our preview program. There we have the ability to publish to Office 365 on the conclusion of an event. And we've added now multi-factor auth support and federated auth support. So until this was completed, only people within your own tenant could sign in and be part of the event team. Now anybody that's federated with your company, or actually anybody with an Office 365 account, can be invited. As long as we can resolve the name in our scheduling UI, you can invite them to join your event team, and we're adding that to the attendee as well. Beyond that, we'll expand well beyond just Office 365 accounts and support OpenAuth, OpenID. So anybody with a resolvable name and an identity can sign into a meeting that you invite them to. So this is our new UI for our admin center. I'm actually going to log in here. I was going to show that to you. Let me log in for a second. So this is our new UI that enables you to turn broadcast on and off for your tenant, enable yourself for preview features. This isn't the TAP program. This is an open program. So over time, we'll be adding new features that are available to users only if their tenant admin has allowed them to access preview features. And this checkbox will be off by default. People have to opt into it. We can control, and this is all user policy as well as tenant. This is the tenant-wide UI that I'm showing, but we have this at the user level as well. So we can have people not allowed to schedule anonymous meetings. They must be authenticated, or vice versa. And also require them to be recorded or not. So some policy level control over what happens to those meetings. So I'm going to sign in. My PC locked while we were talking, so. If there's a question, I can take it while I'm doing this, if I can multitask. So because we are part of Skype and the Skype client, we support any camera that's supported by the Skype for Business client. So we've used it with Room Systems clients, we've used it with Polycom Ring cams, we've used it with mobile devices. We typically will use like a Microsoft camera, webcam. And we also have, Jeff will actually show a picture of it. It's called a Magwell device. It's a HDMI or an SDI to USB converter. And we've used that to take our entire studio and kind of plumb it into the Skype client. But it ends up going through the Skype for Business client. You can't have multiple connected to a single client endpoint. But what we would do is either, in the Magwell case, and Jeff will talk a lot more about this, so I don't want to steal his thunder, but you have a switcher behind it that can do all your video production, and you'd have a produced output that goes into the Skype for Business client. That's one way, and you can do something like a NewTek TriCaster or something for that, and plumb it into your client. Or the client itself can have, if you had multiple users that were all in the event team, you could switch the video between them. So you're producing it. The attendees see what you've decided you want them to see. There's no gallery for the attendees. But you pick the camera that you want active, and that's what your attendees get. So you could be kind of a producer without the sophisticated production software, which is very much by design, because that software, when we tested the solution with the people that typically run these large meetings, they're business managers, communications managers, they're not studio folks, right? They don't know how to operate a TriCaster, which is not for the meek. So they're able to really just, in their own gallery, they just click and say, activate this video, and that's what people see. So a real quick demo of the scheduling experience. So we have a portal. Anybody that wants to try to schedule one, go to broadcast.skype.com. And you can schedule it. I'm going to show you our internal portal, which you wouldn't be able to get to, but it looks very similar. Typically, I would start by scheduling a new meeting and go from scratch. I'm actually going to take a meeting that I've scheduled already. So this I called the Ignite session demo. So I scheduled this one earlier, and I could go and activate this, but instead, I'm going to show you another new feature that we're working on right now to add a new meeting. So I'm going to call this one demo number 2. And I'm going to leave that one anonymous. And here I'm just going to turn on our transcription and translation features. So today, these are the languages that we've chosen for output. We support Spanish, German, Chinese as spoken languages into the system. So if you have a presenter speaking Chinese, we'll recognize those. And then we can translate from any of our source languages into any of our output languages. Today, the organizer has to choose. I don't speak Chinese, so I'm not going to show that particular demo. That would actually be a lot of fun to watch, though. Today, we ask the organizer to pick the output languages because we have a limited space in our selection UI for attendees. That will just go away, and it'll become an attendee choice. Obviously, the organizer won't necessarily know all the languages that their audience wants to speak or read. So for now, we have this choice. And yes, Klingon is actually in that list, and it will remain an option. We have 50 languages, and 2 of them actually are Klingon. There's something about dialects that I'm not quite wise in those ways. But so when I create this, what you'll see is something new, that we are now supporting meeting series. So I can have recurring events. I can call them the multiple R's. So I have reusable URLs. I have resilience in my scheduling. So after I schedule a meeting, if you've done this already, you probably know that this can be a painful experience. If you tell your audience the join link, and then you mess up the meeting somehow, or they're only one time usable. So you try it for a rehearsal, and then you have to send a new join link to your audience because you've used up that meeting. We're fixing that. So now I can schedule the event. I can add multiple instances. When I start one, the audiences will all join that instance that I have running. And they can also view previous instances of that meeting in the attendee app. So I can be watching one live, and I'll see a gallery of past events that are part of that series that I can click and watch on demand. We're also adding, the last R is rehearsal. So we'll have a feature where I can schedule an instance that I want to be a rehearsal. It lets my event team join and try the event out like I want it to be. The attendees will not be allowed to join and watch the attendee view, but the event team can. So as a producer, you can actually do the whole thing end to end. You can see what your audience will see, but the audience won't be able to join quite yet until you're ready. And then you start another instance as the real thing, and the audience would never see the rehearsal. So that work is in progress right now. You'll see that it's actually functional. So what would happen next is usually I would create an Outlook invitation and send that out. I'm going to just join this meeting. And so I'm part of the event team, so I'm going to sign in here. One other thing that we're doing for anonymous meetings, we're getting rid of that screen. So anonymous folks, as they're joining to watch the meeting, they won't be asked any questions. They just join right in and watch. And the event team folks will be taken to a different URL. So here I'm joining. This should look familiar to everybody, I hope. Skype for Business client. And I will unmute. I'm going to actually add my camera, which is just my built-in Surface camera. Ooh, that doesn't look good. So what I'm doing right now is actually, I'm just joining a meeting that we're hosting in our resource forest in the cloud. So this would be like any other meeting that you would host in your own home pool. Light came on, but the video doesn't want to start. I'll try this instead to get the meeting started at least. So what you just saw pop up there is our broadcast controls. So these controls let the producer start and stop the video and select the layout that the audience is going to see. So the layout is just layout of the screen that the audience is watching. They can have video and the content, the slides, side by side. They can do a full screen video or full screen PowerPoint. I'll try one more time. Yeah, it doesn't want to activate my Surface camera. Well, we can start it without. All right, well, I may have to give up on that. I'll see if that wakes up. In the meantime, let me go back to this. So let's talk a little bit about what's coming, and I want to touch on networking before we bring up Jeff. What I tried to just show you was our support for recurring meetings, resilient reusable URLs, and rehearsal support. I talked about the addition of built-in screen sharing using VBSS. Look for that later this calendar year. We are improving the scheduling workflow. So today I keep telling you if you just go to broadcast.skype.com, you can schedule one of these. That's true, but most people don't know that. Today people have to kind of divine that this service exists and this is how they use it. We are working on integrating this into Outlook so I can schedule any meeting and then I can just convert it to or add a broadcast to it. So I don't have to start this process from scratch in our portal. It'll actually just take you through that process automatically. That's still not coming back. Enterprise video via Office 365 video. So now I can publish and choose a channel. That, if this meeting had concluded and recorded, we could show that as well. And then the auth and federation support that I talked about earlier. The way that we generally stack rank and decide what to do as we go forward is through customer feedback. And our own, I mean, we have a long list of things that we know we need to do, but a lot of that's influenced by what you tell us. And so if you go to skypepreview.com, you can go to user voice, and you can either upvote ideas that are already in there, you can add new ideas, but you can tell us what you want us to do, and we respond to that. My job day to day is to respond to those requests and prioritize the right stuff. So with that quick sort of transition to this networking topic, this was a very active topic last year at Ignite where we announced this. It's usually the first question that I get asked about how a company can manage the unicast streams that we support. We do not do a multicast video. So every user in your company that's watching a broadcast meeting is getting their own direct video feed from Azure and from the CDNs. That creates risk of saturating your internet gateway, your WAN. So to mitigate that, we've partnered with Hive Streaming and Collective, both of which are in the audience. If you could raise hands. We have Collective and Hive. So they can answer questions as well if we have questions after the session about what they do and kind of how they're different and great. But both of these technologies are integrated with us for the purpose of being smarter and better at distributing video within the wall of the company rather than having everybody bring their own video feed in from Azure. Both use a peer-to-peer technology to allow people to share the video with each other. And both are 80 to 98% efficient at removing traffic off the firewall. The work that we've done on top of that is understanding that not everybody is going to have the agent software that's required for this deployed on their machines. You'll have people that are using non-domain joined machines that are on the network. You'll have people that are at home on a VPN. You'll have people on mobile devices that can't participate in that network. To accommodate that, we've also built in a ceiling of people that you're allowing to take a direct feed back from Azure. So you can say, I'm willing to have up to 1,000 people take direct feeds, but once you hit 1,000, we stop allowing new people in. Beyond that, they must participate in one of either Collective or Hive's network to consume that video feed. So without these solutions in place, we do support adaptive bitrate, but that's really the problem has to have already hit for the player itself to scale back. So it's probably too late at that point. We do that for things like latency and individuals that are more kind of bandwidth challenged, that are in an environment like this, which is, I think, why this particular client isn't working right now. I'll try one more time. So that will help an end user scale their own player back. And they can do it manually, but we can also do that and detect it automatically. But it doesn't really help the global problem. For that, you really need to bring in one of these folks to help with that. There are others, like we have proxy support as well. Essentially, we are built on top of Azure Media Player and Azure Media Services. Any device, caching device, I know the RAMP Omni Cache product works with Azure Media Player. That one also works with Skype Meeting Broadcast for that reason. So there are other potential mitigations for that, but it is something to be very aware of before you run a large broadcast within your company. So with that, I'm going to end and hand over to Jeff Tyler to talk about our use of broadcast within the company. I'll be back to take questions at the end of the session, and then we've got the partner folks here as well. So I can take questions at the end in the mics, and we can also kind of gather around at the end of the event. So, Jeff?
Thank you, Greg. So to get started, I just want to talk a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. I don't work for the Office Group. I don't work for Skype for business. I don't work for Skype Meeting Broadcast, but I do work for Microsoft, and I am here actually to represent as an internal customer, meaning basically we use this product day in, day out. This is actually how we do our internal video communications at Microsoft. And one of the things that we found in speaking with a number of other enterprise companies, I have been brought in on a few calls to help speak with companies about, they have questions about how do we integrate this with our existing video workflows, and I've been brought in because of the streaming services that my team provides. So just a little bit about who I am. So I am currently the audience experience lead for Microsoft Production Studios. That's a pretty ambiguous title. Basically, what I do is it's a focus with taking our events and really trying to make sure we connect the online experience with the in-person experience. And that includes things for our what we call our tier 1 events, something like this right here, where we're actually public-facing things, press-facing things, press announcements, product announcements, and then also our internal video streaming services. My team does about 350 live streaming events per year for Microsoft. Of that, about 2/3 are what we call internal communications, meaning that they are employee or partner facing, with the remaining 100 or so events being public facing. And actually, I've been streaming, doing video streaming for Microsoft events for about 8 years. I actually used to be one of the people right back there where you can see Alex sitting at the table, actually recording the events in person. We'd actually, I think when we first started, we were doing DVDs. So it's crazy how quickly technology has changed. Pretty quickly, we started moving into enterprise video solutions, online video platforms. And so it was a natural transition for me to come over to actually start doing it actually for Microsoft instead of as an outsourced company. So a little bit about Microsoft Production Studios really quickly. We try to be the center of video production for Microsoft. And it's really all about trying to have a consistent feel and a consistent message and a place where different business groups within the company can go and say, hey, we want to go and create a video, rather than, hey, I'm an expert in Office, doesn't mean I'm an expert in video, so why don't I bring my message to the people that know how to do video and let them focus on their expertise. So that's really where this came about, is going back, 1997 is when we first became a facility, and it used to be that Steve Ballmer and Bill Gates, they'd have to do satellite media tours, meaning they'd be on CNN or wherever they need to be up, on the air, and they used to have to drive all the way to Seattle just to get on the air. So I wasn't there at the time, but somebody said, hey, you know what, you can actually build a satellite uplink, downlink facility right here on your campus and take it from there. So that's how it started, and from there we built sound stages, live production workflows, on-demand workflows, video editing capability. And again, our goals are really just to make sure that we have, keep the video and broadcast expertise in one place, and that way people can come to us and ensure that they have a quality video experience within their, for their marketing opportunities. And so as part of what I do, I run our Microsoft Broadcast and Streaming Center. This is where we run our live events. As well, I oversee the live streaming services. So now, we want to get a little bit into why we use live video within Microsoft for our events. There's a stat here, 37% of the United States employees work remotely at least some of the time. I think within Microsoft, that's probably quite a bit higher, and probably with a lot of companies these days. Additionally, we have a global workforce. We have people in Redmond, we have people in Berlin, we have people in Dublin, we have people all over. It doesn't always make sense to have people joining your meetings in person. So we found that live video is actually a huge part of how we handle our internal communications. Of course, there's efficiency. Even just within our Puget Sound campus, it can be 30 minutes to go from one building to another. So in-person meetings, again, can actually be a pretty big time drain when you times an entire group of people to go and see these meetings. Financial, of course, especially for things where people have to fly in remotely, makes a pretty big difference. And of course, time is money. And of course, just to extend the reach. You can have people that maybe wouldn't be able to join in person just because of time constraints, but they can certainly sit at their desk and watch. So one of the key things we try and do is create a moment. Interactivity is huge. People want to be there. People want to be a part of what's going on. And when it's a one-way communication, they really feel like they're not a part of it sometimes. So we really like features like Yammer, the Q&A, things like that, that really let people actually feel like they have some involvement in the meeting. Additionally, we've actually seen that when you look at live video compared with on-demand video, the view durations are actually quite a bit higher. Because it's a moment that's happening now, people actually really do engage a lot more and stay throughout the whole thing, compared with an on-demand video where people will typically just sort of jump through it and oftentimes not even watch at all, because the call to action to watch an on-demand video is just not as strong as something that's happening live. I think Greg talked a little bit about ways to do engagement. You know, one of the really cool things recently was when the Microsoft Pulse was rolled out, and that was now integrated into Skype Meeting Broadcast. So as an event is going on, we can actually see in real time the audience sentiment and understand how people are feeling about what's being presented. It's actually a really cool tool, very powerful. It can be used for polling as well. So we found that that's actually been very well received across our organization. And then, of course, once the event is over, you can still extend the lifespan with on-demand video. You can summarize it in a mail. But having that live moment really helps to drive that viewership. So a little bit about how we do it. First of all, planning. I think, you know, one of the things we've seen quite a bit is IT people are often responsible for live video for a lot of organizations. We've had a lot of questions about that. But frankly, it's not always a specialty that people have. It's not part of the IT skill set normally. So it's quite often that they'll outsource and bring in a production company or something like that, or set up some cameras and do it themselves, which is great. But the real key is in planning. If you try and go out there and you try and you know, wing it and it doesn't feel like it was well produced, it's just not going to land quite as well. We also spend quite a bit of time looking at our infrastructure. Everything we've built is designed to be sort of looking at the end-to-end and saying where are the points of failure. So things like Greg's giving a demo here with you know, Skype Meeting Broadcast with one machine. We always will have two machines joined to each meeting just to make sure that if one machine fails for whatever reason, we know we're ready. And maybe his demo would have succeeded with a second machine. Sorry, Greg. You know, additionally, we do everything with dual network ports so that we have redundancy there, going through redundant switches, through redundant routers, redundant connections to our corporate network and ISPs. You know, again, just really trying to think every step of the way, how do these things, you know, where can things fail? Because the bottom line is things that are outside of your control, they're going to fail sometimes. You just got to be ready for it and, you know, plan for how you're going to handle that. And of course, equipment and personnel. Again, this is why we created our own broadcast facility, specifically so we could have a center where we can have, you know, high-end video equipment and have broadcast engineers and people that really understand video, as opposed to hoping that every single group knows how to do a video production. So what we actually did, we built these machines that are way overkill for Skype broadcasts. Really, all you need for this thing, you can do it on a laptop. Just about anything that can, you know, join a Skype meeting can actually run it. But again, within that mindset, we actually built these. I think these are DL380 Gen 9 PCs, dual CPUs, and you know, 4 NICs and all kinds of things. Way too much RAM. But again, it's just kind of, for us, we said, hey, this is going to be the center of how we do these things. This is for our corporate communication events that are going out across the entire company. We want to build things in a way that they're actually going to hold up, that we know that we can trust it. So we put in dedicated machines, dual power supplies on dual circuits, et cetera, just to make sure that everything end-to-end is built to be as fail-proof as possible. And then, okay, so why do we want to use Skype Meeting Broadcast? Well, let me talk about what we actually did in the past before this product came around. We used to use media servers around the world in our global data centers. I want to say there's probably about 30 of them or so. And that actually took quite a bit to maintain. You know, you got your Windows updates, you've got you know, the network between each of those machines. It's quite a bit, and it's also expensive to run all those. Additionally, there's things like authentication, having a streaming portal where people can go to view it. We used to spend a lot of time and energy just managing these sorts of things. And frankly, even with all that time and energy, it did not meet our reliability goals. And then, of course, the personnel. We actually used to have, for every major event, we'd have an entire team of people on these, what we call triage calls, just to join and make sure that everything, all these servers around the world were working, that the network was between all those were working and all these things. And I mean, it's incredible how many people were involved in making every single one of these events a success. So then came Skype Meeting Broadcast. And we started using it, I want to say, probably about 14, 15 months ago. I think it was still pre-release at that time. We decided to try it out. And right away, what we loved was that it basically took everything on-prem and said, we don't need that. We can do this all in the cloud and use it as a product. And we don't need to worry about all this maintenance. So we've got actually better reliability now with less time and effort being spent on the management to make these things happen. It comes with the built-in authentication, which can be enabled or disabled if you want an open meeting. Comes with the web portal, comes with the CMS to actually manage your meetings. It has encryption, so it actually meets our standards to make sure that it's secure enough to be in the cloud and actually have our confidential information. And again, the reduction in hardware and staff and dollars spent for us has been huge. It's basically just like a day-to-day thing now. We just fire up these Skype meetings. They just work. And it's as simple as, as Greg was showing, it's as simple as you join a Skype, just a Skype meeting, you click broadcast, and all of a sudden you've just created the Skype, an actual live link that's streaming through the web. And it used to be that you had to have people with expertise or to know all these things about it, but I think Greg used the word democratize. I've always said I feel like it's a great enabler. I think democratize is actually a good word. But really, anybody can do this. Our chief marketing officer, Chris Capicella, once a month he holds a monthly call where he actually just sits at his desk and delivers PowerPoint slides and to the entire organization. And he's able to do that without a lot of technical knowledge because he has this product that lets him do that. It's really abstracts everything else up to the cloud and to the product. So one of the things we want to talk about quickly here, and I know that we're sort of the last thing standing between you guys and beer or wine or whatever your poison is. So we'll try and make sure we get through this and get to the Q&A for you. Video production, a couple best practices. If you want it to look good, people put a lot of time worrying about the camera and the megapixel kind of things, what's the resolution and stuff. But I'll tell you, lighting is huge. If you don't have good lighting, doesn't matter how good the camera is, it's going to look like an amateur production. So this is actually a little diagram. There's supposed to always be 3-point lighting for a video production with the main source of light in front and to the right, and then you've got a side light and sort of a backfill light to provide some depth. Communication, that's a huge one. Quite often, people go and you're set up on site and you think everything's good, but even just like, let's say there's people working back there in the back of the room and there's somebody up here helping up here. If there's not real-time communication, if anything goes wrong and there's anything that needs to be addressed, it's very difficult to do that in real time. We actually just used just a Skype Meeting Bridge to actually handle real-time communications, because we'll actually do things where the event might be happening in another building across our Microsoft campus, and we're actually producing it back at our facility, bringing it back over fiber. So having those communications is huge. You got to know what's going on. Designated roles and responsibilities. Another huge one, simply because it's always great when you're setting up and everyone kind of has a general idea what they're doing. The minute anything minor goes wrong and 2 people try and troubleshoot the same thing, you've got a real problem. Or nobody tries to troubleshoot it because they don't realize whose job it was to actually troubleshoot it. So it should be very clear who owns what pieces and who's doing what. In fact, I actually like to do what, if you look at what pilots do, when they hand off control from one pilot to another, they will actually say, I have control, or I have the plane, or something like that, to say, hey, I'm the one doing this, nobody else should be touching anything. When you're in a live environment, having that mentality that one person is in control is extremely important. Audio. Strangely enough, audio gets almost no credit as something that's important. But I'll tell you, when you're doing these things, if someone's getting kind of a low frame rate or kind of not a great video quality, people might notice, but they're probably not going to complain. I'll tell you, if you have bad audio, that's right there, you'll get complaints right away. And really, so often, there's more content in the audio than in the video. Sessions like these, they don't even have a camera in the back of the room because they realize, the value just isn't, seeing me up on the stage doesn't do a lot of good. So not having the audio would actually just destroy the presentation. So things like hums and buzzes and things like, basically my advice would be just spend a little extra time making sure the audio sounds good. Do actual mic checks with the presenters, the actual people that are going to be speaking. Quite often we see people that come in at the last minute and just want to throw their lapel mic right up there, and it's, they have something on that's ruffling it, and the whole time they're walking around like this, and it's just putting a bunch of noise in the signal, or it's on one side of their shirt and they talk like this, and it cuts in and out as they go. So make sure that you really do your best to test with what's actually going to be used. Make sure it sounds good, sounds clean. And then contingency planning. I say here, even MacGyver goes in with a plan. The fact is, you got to be MacGyver sometimes. It's a live environment. You have to make things work. But at the same time, you should have done all the planning you can so that when those things come up, you're able to focus on them and address them. Being MacGyver actually isn't that cool if you spend the entire time just troubleshooting little things throughout the event. You should actually have most of those things all figured out in advance and know what you're actually going to do when they come up. So this is actually something Greg was talking about, and this is actually, I think, your question as well, was how do we, how do you get the video feed into Skype Meeting Broadcast or into the Skype for Business client? This is what we use, is from Magwell. I'm not endorsing it to say this is what you should use. I'm really just speaking for what we do. It works fantastic. I don't know what kind of magic they have in there, but they're low cost. They're USB 3, SDI in. They support up to 1080p. And Skype for Business will recognize it as an audio and video device. And so basically, you just plug that in, and you can take your high-quality video production, and which is being switched upstream of your Skype for Business client, and just pipe that into your PC and push it out to the world. And it looks and sounds great. This is what we do. There's also, of course, the other modality, which is the non-produced event, which is sort of like the example of our marketing officer sitting at his desk, just using his PC to actually present. In that modality, I think that would be overkill, of course. But for our purposes, being able to take this broadcast level feed and feed it in there and just have it work. Essentially what we're doing, we're not using Skype Meeting Broadcast for the switching capability. We're simply using it really for the portal, for the managed portal and streaming capability. And we talked a little bit about some of this already. Basically, planning for success is really planning for what types of failures might happen. We've gone through every workflow we have and looked at what's our single points of failure. It's really easy to miss one thing, and as I'm sure you all know, that one thing you forgot about is the one thing that's going to fail. It can be as simple as a power strip if it's on the floor and somebody steps on it. So really just try and think about every little piece of equipment, where it's all connected, how it's all powered, all the way through end to end. Again, contingency planning is huge. We actually do checklists for our major events that say, major risks that we've identified, and say, hey, this is something that we think might be prone to failure. If that happens, how do we handle it? And one of the things you always have to plan for is simply the worst case scenario, that somehow nothing works and you're dead in the water. And you always have to say, okay, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to message to people that that's going to be, they should come back and watch it on demand because we're still recording it? Or do we say, hey, we're going to reschedule it? Or whatever you need to do, but plan for every type of failure you can think of. We actually use, when we're planning our major events, like we did the live streaming for the keynotes on Monday from Ignite. And when we look at that, we actually talk about the meteor scenario, which is a meteor hits Redmond, our broadcast facility is dead in the water, are we still on the air? I don't want to see a meteor hit my building, whether I'm in it or not. But I also want to know that if that does happen, that the show goes on. So we really actually spend a ton of time just thinking about how things fail, pulling cables on things to see how they work, how they fail over, and really understanding that. And then anyone that's a project manager of any kind probably knows about FMEA, failure mode emulation analysis, and that really ties back in. And it's just really thinking through, hey, what are we going to do in these cases? How is this going to work? How are things going to fail? And trying to test and simulate all those failures to build that planning. And with that, actually, we have a couple slides we need to run through here, and then we're going to hit the Q&A, and Greg can come back up. So we've got, if you want to deploy, ramp up new services, and onboard new users with Microsoft Fast Track, you go there. I don't know what that means. Join the Microsoft Tech community. This is actually huge. People like Greg are actually online to help answer questions and connect with you on that site. If you want to join the Skype for Business community, there's your QR code. I don't see any phones, so we'll go on. And if you want to win a new Skype room system, make sure you hit the expo hall at Microsoft Showcase MS111 or the Logitech booth at 1818. Snap a photo of the device in action and share your photo on Twitter with the hashtag meeting accomplished. And you could win your Skype room system bundle. Thank you. And now,
I'm trying to get this to work.
oh, okay, Greg's going to try and get that demo going again. And if you do want to evaluate the session, you can use that QR code, or of course, go to myignite.microsoft.com. Oh, we don't have a QA slide. Yeah, so as far as the SDN integration, I'll let Greg speak to that. We've actually spoken with both Hive and Collective about that, but we're actually not using that today at Microsoft. Frankly, our network has pretty awesome capacity in the Puget Sound, but we are looking at that as a possibility for to help with our regional sites. But Greg, he's asking other partners that you're looking at for SDN solutions.
For software, no. So those are the two that because it does take some extra work for Skype to understand that the player should invoke the local agent and pull the video from that local agent. I think I'm gonna have to restart. So we don't have other software-defined network solutions that we are partnering with. What we do have, because we're, again, built on Azure Media Player, any solution that is kind of an off-board solution, like an appliance, a gateway, a cache, proxy cache, would work with Skype Meeting Broadcast if it works with Azure Media Player. We have no additional certification program. We don't actually validate that it will work. But if they are self-certifying to work with Azure Media Player, then they would work with Skype Meeting Broadcast.
Yes.
So then,
I couldn't hear the beginning.
The time frame for EDU.
For EDU, yeah, I can say this calendar year, next few months, but okay. Yeah, sorry, the question was a more specific time frame about enabling EDU customers. What I will say, though, there is some detail I can provide on top of that. So we're targeting end of calendar year. I hope it's sooner than that, but that's probably worst case. We are starting to differentiate between EDU faculty and EDU student. We will light up broadcast for EDU faculty. We will not light it up for EDU students. So an individual student in their dorm room, they can't start a 10,000 person broadcast. We will allow faculty, teachers, staff to create broadcast meetings and invite, so students can join. They can't originate a meeting. But joining is still supported. That's correct. Yeah, it will not work for EDU. Yeah. Yeah, every tenant has a verified as EDU stamp, and if that stamp is present, we don't let them into the portal for now, but that'll get fixed. Is there a question at the mic here?
yeah.
The what's coming new, I saw something calendar integration.
So
can you explain a little bit? I think you're planning to do scheduling this through calendar. Is it what it is?
So I don't think I have to repeat the questions at the mic, right? So we will, today you have to understand that the portal is there. You have to know that ahead of time and schedule there, and that will let you create a meeting on the calendar. So once I create the meeting on our portal, it'll open in Outlook. We create the invite for you. It'll open in Outlook. You can send it out to the attendees. It shows up with a join link on their calendar. I want people to start in the calendar and schedule the meeting there, and then say I want this to be a broadcast versus a regular Skype meeting. So that's stuff that we're working on now. So I can create the meeting in Outlook. There'll be a kind of a meeting settings option, and I can just go and say, I want to add broadcast to this meeting, and we'll convert it.
But you guys are not planning to put another plugin, right? The idea is to have the same Skype meeting plugin and have this through meeting options.
Yeah, so we're actually doing it by modifying that plugin. Okay. Yeah. So the plugin would still be required. It's just the normal Skype for Business
Any dates?
add-in.
Dates 6 months horizon, or that is the same thing?
That one's on the 6-month horizon. That one's closer to the tail end of that 6-month horizon. There's a lot more work, and that's making it available, right? Because we have to go through the client release train to make that happen. there a question at the mic?
Yeah, in respect to capture devices for production level events, is there anything that's like part of the certification or approved devices program?
For capturing? Sorry.
Yeah, you showed like the capture device that you guys you guys use. I mean, are there approved devices that we know will be recognized by the client?
Yeah, so on the Skype for Business website on TechNet, there's a list of all of the approved devices for Skype for Business clients. To my knowledge, the Measwell, and I think Blackmagic is the other one that's on that list and I know to work. There may be other capture cards as well that I haven't tried personally. We've kind of selected the Measwell because they're small. I have one in my backpack pretty much all the time, and they're, I think, $300 or so to purchase. Okay. So that's why we chose that, but I mean, there's others.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. Any others? I'm still trying to make this demo work.
Yep, I can log on mine if you want.
Yep, so the question there is there a kind of a white glove solution to allow a third-party production company, kind of an expert in large meetings, to come in and run a Skype meeting broadcast for a CEO event sort of thing? So the best way I can answer that is we will support that model as soon as the federation work is done. So you could either find a third party that would do this. They can schedule the meeting for you and invite the people from your company as DLs or by individuals to either be on the event team or be on the audience. Or you can schedule the meeting and invite this third party to become part of the event team and then invite your own audience. So it will work. We don't have specific partners yet that that we're saying they're certified to do this white glove support, but we're starting to build out the infrastructure to get to that model. The first step of that is the ability to even federate and join. The next step, though, as soon as we do that, people are going to start asking for step two. Step two is make our scheduling service, make the APIs accessible for that, so they don't have to go through our UI to do it. They have their own ingestion tools for managing events. They want to just click and create the meeting in our service. So we're actually working on that in parallel, anticipating that need. That's a little further out. It's kind of beyond that. That part will be beyond the 6-month horizon, probably. But it's certainly on the roadmap and does come up quite a bit. Yeah.
Thank you. So when you use the standard Skype meeting and you share media content, the actual audio stream is not captured. Is that something which is addressed with the broadcast meeting?
I honestly,
it's weird with the
echo
echo
is
up
terrible.
here. We don't have the speakers. It's actually really hard it's hard to hear.
I can't hear.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah. Can you hear now? Let me just go.
It's actually easier without the mic, I think. I can repeat it, so if you want to come up and ask, I'll repeat it for you. Yep. Okay, yep. So the question is, I'm going to paraphrase the question slightly. In a Skype for Business meeting, today using video-based screen sharing, so the newest version of screen sharing. With RDP, it does carry audio. When we switch over to video-based screen sharing, which is probably what you're starting to see now if you have fully updated clients, we don't send audio with that. It's video only. So how would I pre-record a video, like a marketing video, if I want a sizzle reel I want to put into my broadcast, how do I stream that and let the 10,000 people see it? The way to accomplish that today is with one of these capture devices. That's pretty much the best or only way to do it. Video-based screen sharing will eventually include audio too, but it's still not, you'll never get, well, I shouldn't say never, but it's not in the foreseeable future that screen sharing is going to be 30 frames per second at HD. So you'll still have a better experience by capturing it from a second machine that's playing the video through one of these capture devices and having the machine treat it like a camera. That's probably the best, that is the best way, and today it's the only way to accomplish that scenario.
You can also embed it into a PowerPoint, and it'll play that way. If you upload the PowerPoint to web apps, and do it that way.
Yep, so your comment is about, can I embed the video into my PowerPoint and then just upload the PowerPoint and play it that way? That also does not carry audio. It does not. So we will play the video at a terrible frame rate. This is for broadcast, not for a regular Skype meeting. In broadcast, our Azure service effectively screen scrapes the PowerPoint, and it screen scrapes at 30 frames per second. But the video still never really comes out quite that good. But we don't do audio. So if you have an embedded video in a PowerPoint, you won't hear it if there's audio in that. We'll try the mic. This mic might be better.
I'll try this.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Currently, if you're showing a PowerPoint and the video from a camera, you have the option to control the layout, so you can show the PowerPoint with the video. Are there any plans to allow us to show multiple camera feeds, for example, where we have two cameras shown at the same time in sort of side-by-side format?
Yeah, so I wasn't going to talk about this particular work, but we are doing some work to improve that production experience, and along with that, we're adding new layouts, so kind of picture-in-picture layout with two video sources or side-by-side video sources, inverted, so PowerPoint on the other side, that sort of thing. So we are working on that. It's further away. I don't want to put it in the 6-month roadmap because I can't really commit to a time frame. But we are absolutely developing that to make it, give you more choices and also make that production experience a little better than what you have today stacked in the Skype for Business client.
Hey, thank you.
Yep.
Although you could do that with multiple Skype joins in the same room, correct?
No, we still cannot compose two videos side by side.
Oh, side by side.
Yeah.
I missed that.
Yeah, or even overlay.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
In lieu of the adaptive streaming, is there any way to force the actual video quality either through the tenant level or the meeting level or even the client level?
Yeah. That is almost consistently the third question asked, except for today. Yeah, so not right now. It's asked so much that it's moving its way to the top of our roadmap. So yes, we will provide, we're actually going to go one step further and add an audio-only switch for people that just don't want to even add video. They just want to have an audio meeting to even further reduce the network requirement for the event. So we'll let you block to a certain resolution or a certain bit rate, and then we'll also let you just turn off video.
So that'll be at the meeting level then?
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Do you have an ETA of when that might be available?
That one I wouldn't want to give an ETA for.
Okay, thanks.
We're working on it, but I don't want to say this quarter or not.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I've got a couple of questions for you.
Oh, there's one. Somebody's asking one right here.
Go ahead.
Can you wait 1 second? Oh, I see. So the question is, can I take an existing feed with like an RTMP endpoint and stream it into the meeting somehow? We don't support that right now. I don't know that we ever really would. I mean, there are solutions that'll do that for you. I still want to kind of retain that it's a meeting, and that goes beyond our kind of democratizing the meeting story. So for right now, the answer is no. We don't have that. It's not even in a plan. Yeah.
So I have WAN links all over the world, and I have some really slow WAN links. Is there a optimal or a minimum bandwidth? Because some of the places I deal with in West Africa, it's just the bandwidth is terrible.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of the Skype back and forth, and what we found is sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and the audio is terrible, so we just use a telephone. It seems like it's a much better.
Yeah. So that's very similar to the question that was asked earlier about can I tenant wide? You're asking more individual control of certain offices. Mm-hmm. We'll do the tenant wide one first. I don't know that we won't ever go to the tenant or to the office level, but that's where our partners come in. So both Hive and Collective that you should talk to, that's the problem they're geared up to solve. Right, so they can help to have one HD feed even into a remote office and then have everybody consume the feed from that one person. Mm-hmm. So as long as you can get 1.7 megabits or really lower, because we never we never really hit that peak, into that field office, then everybody can consume the feed from them. So you really don't need, it's not unicast at that point. You just have one feed going into that office. And so there I would definitely talk to the partners.
The other
solve that
question I
problem.
have is, I have remote sites, and what they do is one person will want to talk to one person, and we find that it doesn't offload to the cloud server. It's almost like peer-to-peer. Is that still the case, or is something going to be worked on to offload that to the cloud server?
Well, that sounds like the opposite problem. You'll start
Well, I've got
creating
two
a new problem
problems, so-
if they're both going to the cloud. So what Collective and Hive do is actually allow the peers to talk to each other to get it off the local area network rather than both of them going over your WAN back to their nearest CDN endpoint.
Yeah, I got some unique requirements, and maybe I can just chat with you offline.
Yeah, we can whiteboard it, or you can
Yeah.
talk. I see our Collective guy in the back there. Yep.
Okay.
And Hive, yeah, Hive's right in front of you. Yeah. It's hard to see with these lights. Any others?
Do you guys have a documentation on, for on-prem customers on how to leverage this functionality?
Yep. I should have put the link in the deck, but if you just go to TechNet and search for Setup Skype Meeting Broadcast, we walk you through the process to do the federation with the online cloud and with your tenant. And then once that, it's actually a very simple set of steps. You set up federation with the cloud from your on-prem environment. You check to make sure your firewalls are open to let people access Skype.com and the Azure service endpoints, and then have people just go schedule meetings.
How about creating tenant and all those steps, single sign-on and all those things that you mentioned earlier?
Sorry, the echo is...
I'm sorry, creating tenant, the tenant in the cloud, the Microsoft tenant for the company? Creating an online tenant and then syncing our users and...
The federation is with our resource forest. So
Okay.
it's not the Microsoft tenant as the corporation.
Okay.
It's a shared resource entity. It's called resources.meetings.skype.com, I think. And there's one for each geography. So either your Go Local or the nearest region. You federate with that one, and it'll let people schedule meetings in that resource forest and trust. You need trust from that client to that meeting pool. And that's the only real requirement for setting up an on-prem environment to use our resource forest in the cloud.
Okay, those details are there in the documents, right?
That's all, yeah, that's in
Okay.
TechNet, and it's all detailed how to do it, the commandlets and the UI to do it and everything.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Looks like that's it. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Still want to try and answer a bit?